Stars at Noon, new film from director Claire Denis, starring Margaret Qualley, Joe Alwyn and Benny Safdie. It's based on a novel by Dennis Johnson and was originally meant to star Robert Pattinson instead of Joe Alwyn, but due to scheduling conflicts with the Batman, he was replaced eventually. The film takes place in Nicaragua, and in a major change from the original novel, which I haven't read, it's not Nicaragua during the military revolution a couple of decades ago, but rather modern day Nicaragua during the COVID pandemic, which is an interesting way of very specifically dating the film. But at the end of the day, I do feel that keeping the original time period would have fit the story better. Because the story is a mix of romance, drama, and thriller. It follows a young woman named Trish. She's an American woman staying in Nicaragua, trapped in the country, unable to leave due to problems with money and her passport. She's a sort of drifter, claims to be a journalist, but even if she was one at some point, her press pass has been revoked now. She spends her days drinking too much alcohol and prostituting herself in order to get American dollars and survive. She's a complete mess, no real plan of action, just sort of a miserable, desperate existence. One day, she meets and sleeps with an Englishman claiming to work for an oil company. She becomes sort of interested in him and perhaps sees him as a potential way of getting her out of the country. And then she ends up warning him that one of the people he's meeting with is not actually a business person as he claims to be, but rather a cop from Costa Rica. And very quickly it turns out that the Englishman is in much more trouble than he thought, and then because of the association she gets pulled in trouble as well, which is doubly complicated because of the blossoming feelings between the two of them. So the first half of the film I actually quite liked. It has a very strong atmosphere, and I like this type of stories where a Westerner is existing in a tropical country, in a troubled country as well, in difficult times, trying to survive. I really like those, especially those journalist stories about Africa or Vietnam or Southeast Asia or South America. I think there's a lot to mine there, and I do still think this one would have worked better with the war as the background instead of COVID. But in any case, it's still somewhat workable. The cinematography, the jazzy music, the feeling of slow desperation, and Margaret Qualley's solid performance all work. I have to say I was kind of mesmerized by her because she really toes the line between being hypnotizingly attractive and at the same time terribly pitiful, pathetic even. Very interesting layered character. However, once the trouble begins for real and the characters go on the run, I felt that the movie just sort of falls off the cliff. The story becomes too cryptic. To this moment, I don't really know who was trying to achieve what and what the general conflict was about and what did the main character do in the end and why it all even mattered in the first place. It's jumbled and unclear and very meandering. It's like the film loses a clear direction at some point and just struggles to go on until the very underwhelming ending. I also thought that Joe Alwyn was not too impressive as Daniel, and I have to wonder how the film would have looked like if Pattinson were there instead. As it is, I think it starts very interestingly, but it doesn't maintain that quality all the way to the end. In fact, it's only really any good in the first half, with an unfocused and directionless second one, which unfortunately makes it kind of a disappointment.